Hello everyone, it's Carrie here from the Female Entrepreneur Association and welcome to this very special Money Masterclass. We are joined by the amazing Anne Wilson, who is the author of the fabulous new book, The Wealth Chef. So Anne, thank you so much for joining us.
It is such a pleasure to be here, and it's great to be here in the UK, actually. So we're not speaking across the oceans, and I am so excited for this session tonight to be able to talk about money, get questions answered, and bring this conversation into our lives.
I know, that's what we need to do. So basically, for everyone listening, over the next hour or so, we're going to be having a conversation around money. So if you have any questions whatsoever for Anne throughout this session, then you can leave a comment down the right-hand side. There's a comment box. So please use that, ask any questions, and I'll make sure that Anne is going to answer them for you. But this session, as well as to celebrate Anne's fabulous new book, which if you haven't received a copy of yet, then make sure you get one because it's absolutely brilliant. She has very kindly given us a link so that we can all still get a free copy of her book, and I've put the link in the chat box right at the top. There's a $7 shipping fee, but basically Anne's bought the book for you, so that $7 is so you can have it shipped to you wherever you are in the world. So definitely take advantage of it because I have read it and it's absolutely brilliant. So as well as celebrating the book, we are also going to have this session so Anne can share these strategies and we can talk about money so that by the end of it we all feel really empowered around the topic of money. We all feel like we can take more control of our money this year. So I can't wait to jump into it. But Anne, obviously at the beginning of this year we did a video interview that I posted out, and the response from it was unbelievable. When I was reading through the comments, I guess I was really shocked, but at the same time I wasn't shocked because they are definitely, what people were writing were things that I had felt or feel sometimes. And I wrote down some of the comments that people left because I thought it would be a really great way to start this session off, because I think a lot of people perhaps on this session with us this evening are going to understand feel like this too. So for example, Zoe Foster said, "Wow, mind blown. I am definitely one to shy away from financial talk. I have always got my partners do my accounts and tax returns. Starting from now, I plan to take control, and in fact, I'm already putting systems in place, like having a few pounds a week redirected to a savings account, which I will up incrementally when it feels right. Also, actually facing those real money issues, like how much my current life costs. I think that's a hugely scary exercise, and yet so blooming necessary. No wonder we have so many money problems when we can't even look it fully in the face." And then Casey said similar things. She said, "I always have my head in the sand when it comes to financial talk." And a lot of the comments were like that, and I know that you obviously saw some of them because I saw your comments back. So this is something a lot of people feel, and I feel it too. Sometimes I just want to stick my head in the sand and not have to deal with it, which is not not good. And after we did the interview together, you really opened my eyes, not just about wanting to generate more income, but by thinking about actually how do I generate more wealth in my life. And so that was really key. So I really want to talk about that. And before you jump in, I want to leave it on an empowering note after obviously this, how a lot of us feel like we're burying our heads in the sand, because in your book, one of the things you said, which I absolutely love, is this. You said, "It doesn't matter where you are right now or where you're starting from. What matters is that you're willing to learn. No one comes out of the womb a financial genius. Every wealthy person learned how to succeed at the money game, and so can you." And I love that because that is so empowering for every single one of us to know that no matter where we are right now, we can turn our situations around, we can get in control, and we can take, we can understand wealth and get money working for us, which is such a good feeling. So I'll let you jump in, obviously, because you're the expert on all of this, and you must have dealt with so many people feeling like this.
And thank you. And I think that's such a great place to start about sometimes this overwhelm. Do we just want to be the ostrich stew and stick the head in the sand? And firstly, I just really want to share that even through my entire journey and where I've managed to get myself now financially and in a place and feeling very empowered around money, so much more confident than when I started, there are still times where I go, "Oh God," And so I think the thing is to first let go of we're feeling that you've got to have this place where it's all absolutely sorted, it's all perfect. because it is a dance, it is a journey, and like anything, that confidence comes from spending more time with it, getting intimate with our money. It's a bit like a relationship in the same way as with a partner. You think, okay, great, we've met this great person and hunky-dory, and then maybe you get to move in together or get married. And there's constantly new layers and levels which will come in, and new beliefs will emerge, and wonderful new things to explore and emerge. So I think the key thing is sort of let go of any illusion that you suddenly get to a place that, okay, this money stuff's ticked off. But at the same time, that might feel depressing, but at the same time, in more an empowering way, that there's these wonderful layers of this journey of wealth, starting off with really going, okay, this thing called money, managing it, handling it in my life, giving it more space, but then going down into the layers of then, understanding money actually wants to work for me.
Yeah.
That's one of the first key distinctions around this whole education and mindset, and everything is about we have to work for it. And when we start going, money is just dying to work for us, but what do we need to do to put it in that place? So then it becomes, how do I become a better and better leader to my money? In the same way as a business, if we've got people working for us or tools, how do we get that then working more effectively, more efficient? How do we expand that? And that's where this journey keeps going. And then our own journey of what is wealth for us, and playing with these 4 different ingredients that that we have to play with in this, fun play kitchen. That's all it is, just see it as a playful place, to create more of that feast of our lives, make it more juicy. And
I love
continuation.
I love that, and what you said about obviously looking at money, like you've got to be a leader for your money, and I think this is something you touched on a little bit in the video interview we did, and I remember thinking what an empowering way to think about money and to see money, as in you have to lead your money and tell your money what you want it to do for you, which I think is incredible, and I never thought about money like that before you said it. But I think whilst on this conversation and talking about this journey that people have to take, you have got a really inspiring story, because I know from the interview, but also from the book, you share your story about your backwards and forwards with money, of trying to build a successful life and thinking you knew what the successful life looked like, that then got you into debt, and trying to then figure things out. And I think a word you used was, knowing, especially in our conversation, was you felt like you were floundering. And I think that so many people feel like this when it comes to money. They just don't know where to begin. So can you give us an overview of your story? Because I think I'm always of the opinion, if someone can do it, we can all do it. So I think you're an amazing inspiration and leader on this topic, because if you've been able to do it, I think in the book it says obviously you manage to get there in 8 years. So you can obviously explain what all of this means and share your story. But I think if you can do it, then every single one of us now listening and watching this and hearing your strategies, we can all do it, and that is amazing. So yeah, could you share a little bit with us?
Absolutely. And I think this key aspect of what we're talking about, that floundering side, was, as I launched forth into my career and in my early 20s, these definitions of, what was to be successful. And I had so many dreams and hopes and things that I wanted to do, and this adventure called life. And to that point, I'd only ever been taught the single recipe of go and study hard, then go and work hard and earn this money. And in my early 20s, my father died, and I'd got to watch my mum, for the first time ever, really having to deal with the day-to-day aspects of money, plus, because she had been looking after and bringing up 6 kids, also going, well, the income that had been coming from my dad's working, very much that traditional model, that had now stopped. So now with that little pot that was available, or pot of money, how to make sure that this lasted, how to stretch it out, not knowing sure how long she needed that to last for, and what to make sure to do that it didn't all dry up. And that was a vulnerability and fear that I vowed I never wanted to be in that position. And me and my siblings, one, we were young, but even so, other people around us, no one seemed to be able to help or offer any advice. It was just that real, the hope strategy, just hope that it would all be okay. And so I vowed I never wanted to be in that position. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get that good job. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to make sure that money's coming in. And even though the money started coming in, and then it started coming in every other form, as I've mentioned in the interview, then suddenly it was like, oh, I could have this credit card and this overdraft and that loan, and on top of the student loan, get the car loan, because I knew no other way. And that's what I thought was the money journey, that you sort of went into this borrowing, and I was told that was all okay. But the baggage that it brought with it, and almost this sense of being completely trapped, that now, you know, the first few years maybe felt, oh, this is all cool, but then that sense of vulnerability and fear that if I couldn't work or if something happened to my job, it not only, I just wouldn't survive, because I now owed all of this. And then I managed to get myself out of debt. And the Blitz Your Debt recipe in the book is now a much refinement of the strategy I followed, but breaking free of that. And even in that stage, that floundering around was also an element of feeling like a fraud. That in a way there was the surface side, got the success inside, but underneath the surface, this worry, this anxiety, this debt. And I think for so many women and people have shared with me this duality of feeling, on one level, having to put this face out that looks like you've got all the aspects of your life handled, and then under the surface, the worry and going on there, which is why it so often spills into relationships. How do we have those conversations, and triggers this anxiety and fear? And we all know when we're in that sort of place, all sorts of other stuff comes up in other areas of life. But then I went, okay, I've now got it. I'm never ever going to go into that evil debt place. It was sort of became like, you know, but on the food side, you know, sugar is the evil thing. You know. And then I swung to the absolute other extreme of going, okay, I don't want to ever go to that place. So now I'm going to control myself. If I can control this, you know, crazy Anne and my needs and desires, then maybe I'll feel safe. So if I can protect my money from me, and if I can save as much as I can, then hopefully sometime in the future there'll be enough, and then I can go and do the things I want. A whole bunch of fundamental flaws in that argument. Firstly, I had no idea what enough is. So it was this sometime in the future, when could I actually start living that life? The second part was all about how little I could live on. And although I'm very grateful for that experience, because I really learned the difference between needs versus wants, getting really clear about what was going out of my life, and how to make sure that some of that stayed in my life, I didn't understand the difference between investing and saving. So it was just about holding on to money, not actually making money go and work for me. Fundamental difference. And then this whole aspect of depriving myself. The suppression, then still not living life, juicily. It all just blew up in a big, messy money drama, as it could only do, because the creative side of me, my spirit, my soul, the part that wanted to have adventures and do fun things, which is what life is about, and expression, was completely suppressed. And so, yeah, that, you know, if you try and suppress something, it's going to find a way to break its way out. And it did, and it all blew up. And both the money I'd held on to so tightly to make myself feel safe, and the marriage, walked out of the door at the same time. And I can really remember that time, again, a sense of how had I now worked for, you know, 10, 11, 12 years at this time, been working hard, believing I was following the recipe, doing the right thing, progressing in my career, but making no progress on my money stuff, my financials, and in fact going backwards. And again, that sense of, wow, that's a spectacular failure. And then, you know, the added stuff of, now I was a divorcee in my early 30s, on my own, in a foreign country, broke. I was like, you know, and I'll be completely honest, I sat on my pity potty for a little while, feeling sorry for myself. And it was really in that moment I went, okay, I want to have money in my life. You know, I tried to go the whole, oh, money's not important. But when I really felt that wasn't my truth either. we live in a material world, and money is a key input. It's an ingredient into just about every aspect, whether it's our health, our relationships, wanting to contribute, whether it's travel, the home we get to live in. And so then I went, okay, hang on, I just absolutely accept that money is important to me. And so therefore, let me start learning something about it. And I'd gone to school and learned for a career, but I realized I'd never actually learned anything about money besides how to work for it. And that's when the journey started. And that's where I realized, nobody pops out the womb as a financial genius, and that maybe this is something I could learn. But in those initial days, I was still floundering around because I'd pick up books and some would get me all motivated on, you can do anything, do this, those rah-rah books, which are really important. It's really important to get that belief set. But I'd get all revved up, but there was nothing on, well, the how, the practical steps. Or I'd pick up a book on investing in the stock market, and it was like, oh, God, they were fantastic if you had insomnia, because I felt like they'd put me to bed, sleep in 10 minutes. Or they made me just feel very stupid, as though this was a whole other world, the jargon, the language, as though this was some private club that I hadn't been invited to and it would never be allowed in because they spoke a foreign language. But I persevered and I tried various things. I kissed a couple of money frogs. I still was trying to look for that one ka-ching event that would then sort my money stuff out so I could have it ticked off. Then I could go off and live my life. And I think that's also the media and a lot of the things that we celebrate. We see the Big Bang event, the business that's sold for the millions, or the person winning the lottery, or the one stock that earns a whole lot. And this mindset that I truly didn't understand how money expands, how it's a series of compounding, and we'll come to this juicy ingredient, compounding, and why it's so vital. And so I kissed those money frogs, a couple of those get-rich-quick schemes, and they didn't turn into the wealth prince, who is now going to sort it all out for me. And, I think that as women also there's an aspect of the fairy tales that we grow up with. Even a lot of the modern movies and the love stories, there's this person that will just say, don't worry, it's all sorted. And there's a little part of all of us, hoping somebody else will just deal with that stuff. And I think even that story, in a way, tells us that somehow this is a complicated thing or a difficult thing. And so I had to let go of that and realize that actually wealth is a process. And it's about creating daily habits and routines and systems that causes that wealth to grow rather than contract. And so through this journey, I discovered there were just these 5 core recipes. But when I applied consistently, it expanded. And key part of that was then focusing on what wealthy was for me and making sure I made that conscious decision to live a great life while I did it, not sometime in the future. And yeah, it took 8 years from that day I was in a funny little apartment in Hong Kong feeling very sorry for myself to achieve my own financial freedom. And maybe right now I said, what does that mean? Where I was then in a place where I had enough assets, these things that could earn money for me in my life, working for me, that I could choose to work actively for income or not and live the lifestyle I chose. And so that is my definition of financial freedom, and really the place that my goal and my dream and my passion for everybody on here and everyone I get to speak to is to get to that place, the ultimate freedom of choice.
That's what really excites me about listening to you talk and hearing your story. A, it's so inspirational, but B, I think the fact that I wrote this down. I was making notes. Wealth is a habit, and then it's a process, and it's a process that you followed, and within 8 years you got to that place of financial freedom. And the thing that excites me most is that I know that if from today, this year, I start to follow the same processes, it makes me think, what will be possible for me within 8 years, or within however long? Like, how could I turn my situation around? Because I think, myself and probably the majority of the people watching, we're entrepreneurs, we build businesses, and that's great. And, it's great to look at different ways you can generate different multiple revenue streams for your business, make passive revenue streams for your business. But I have always been of the mindset that the more revenue streams you can create in your life, which aren't necessarily all associated, the more secure you are. So I think after having the conversation with you earlier on this year, that was the one thing that really stuck out for me as well, was that is how do I secure my situation? Like, you have obviously multiple streams of income that generate you revenue without you having to do anything. So you're in a really stable position financially, which I'm sure is where all of us want to get to, which is exciting, because if you can do it, we can all do it. And like you said, it's a process. And you said so many things in that part which I just resonated with entirely. I think the part about feeling that financial world is a private members club that we are not invited to, you know, I feel like that so often whenever I've tried to, you know, look into things like stock market or in any of that kind of stuff, it just is like so overwhelmingly confusing, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, it just scares me. And then I saw something else he said, that some other spectrum of the money, oh actually it was about not, you know, not wanting money in the sense that you just wanted to like repel it. I have been there before and felt like I don't need money in my life and all this stuff, and goodness me, I've been in,
it's hard work.
yeah, I've been in so many circles myself with regards to this stuff. I mean, I remember a few years ago being in this place where I was just like, I'd already made so much money and then like basically spent so much money, and I was in this place where I was really struggling, and I was like, oh, I was in despair, and I felt like my mindset was so bad. I felt like in myself I was repelling money. So my last resort was to make someone taught me how to make financial abundance, like visualizations, and so I made a financial abundance one and listened to it all the time, just as a way to start getting myself to start rethinking what I was believing about money and how I was feeling about money emotionally. And oh my goodness, it was a turning point for me. But I'll be really interested to then get into this with you about what your process is, because I know you share so many wonderful strategies in your book. So what are some things that people can start doing today, over the next few weeks, even maybe right now on this session, where they can actually start doing things that are going to help them to get to the place they want to be financially?
Well, there's two great starting points, and you've brought up this key aspect, which is about our beliefs and our mindset. You know, creating your own financial freedom, getting really confident with your money, getting your money working for you. The great news is it's only 20% technical skills. Learning what's an index tracker and, you know, getting your stock market investments or an investment property strategy. The technical side is actually quite straightforward and is only about 20% of it. 80% of it is the mindset and starting to learn how to manage ourselves. So let's tackle both of those things, because you need to do the two in parallel. And just, you know, on my journey, and the power of understanding the power of our minds is, I started this journey and I was an engineer, I was a civil engineer, and I was very much in this technical linear side and a little bit of, and excuse my language for everyone, but like that woo-woo stuff was a bit for weirdos, you know, very much the scientific linear thinking side. And so I was doing the work around starting investing, managing my money, making sure I paid myself first and these sides. And I was seeing progress in my wealth paths. It was growing. And it was a good 4 years into this 8-year journey. But there was just a feeling that it really wasn't taking off like I wanted it to. And also there was just sort of this languaging in my head that, is this it? Is this what it's about? And it felt quite a lot of hard work still, you know, even on this journey. And I'll always remember this day. I was actually standing having a cigarette on a pavement in London. And I often joke and say a cigarette saved my life, which I and there was this sort of grey day. And there was these two people having this conversation, and they sounded completely animated, and and I had no idea. Now, for those of you who maybe in London or know London or the UK, you don't really just wander over to two complete strangers on the pavement, but there was something about the energy in them, and that made me walk up to two complete strangers and say, "What are you talking about?" And they sort of looked at me, and then they shared with me they'd just come back from this event with some dude, this American chap I'd never heard speak about, I'd never heard of. It sounded completely like they'd drunk the Kool-Aid. But there was something in it that I think there was obviously a part in me, there was some gap. I was still very much of, define the world, this is the way the world looks like. And they first planted the seed that actually you can create your own reality. That by mastering your internal thoughts, your mind, your beliefs, your values, starting to understand how you can create your own reality. And I thought, well, this sounds completely bloody weird, but there's something in it. And in that moment, I made a key decision. And from that moment, I've realized that our life is made up by the moment-by-moment decisions we make. Often we think our destiny is those big decisions, who we marry, the career we do, what business we have, whether we have children, whether we don't. And I've realized it's these moment-by-moment decisions, moment-by-moment decisions we make about where we direct our money, where we allow to go out our life, what we're going to do with it in the moment, how we manage ourselves. So I made a decision that to walk across the road and buy a book on the sky that they were speaking about. I could so easily have made the decision to just walk inside and go, oh, that sounds interesting, but I'll get back into my normal life. And that book happened to be a book by Tony Robbins. So that was my first foray into this world of, let's say, personal development or expanding another concept. And then I did even a more radical thing. I actually read the book. Which is, so for any of you ordering the book, go and get your free copy of the book, but please, when it arrives, read it. And so also with the book, giving away, I've got a 4-week course that you'll also be getting, just to keep this momentum going, because it's about taking those small actions. And this mindset side was so key for me. And that as I started applying what I was learning and what you spoke about, consciously visualizing on what I wanted in my life, starting to unpack what were the beliefs I had about money, about it has to be hard work, that it's difficult, that it's confusing, and starting to use mantras and affirmations and visualizing. So a key step right here and right now is I encourage everyone to go and create for them what is their financial free vision. What would that look like? What are the components in it? Make it juicy. What does it mean to you? And describe that. What would your day look like when money is flowing in freely? What are the kind of things you'll be doing? And this reigniting our dreams of possibility is so important, because if we don't see possibility for ourselves, if we don't believe that, we won't take the actions. And reigniting that for so many of us, and getting creative and using tools, mechanisms, whether it's using a vision board, whether it's doing a visualization, listening to an audio, constantly feeding that back in. And initially, you'll feel like, well, this is a lie, and just noticing that, well, no, I can't do that. But just start noticing that internal talk and being very aware. And I encourage people to get a wealth journal and just notice what are the beliefs that come up about money. Even just write down money is, and notice some stuff that comes up, but keep going, because often we might start with a nice surface level and write down the things we should say. Money's freedom, money's adventure, money's power. But when we scrape off that surface, that's when we see the interesting stuff underneath. Maybe money's scary, money's complicated, money's the root of all evil. Because with awareness gives us a tool to start working with that. So this mindset side is so key. And when I started working on my mind and mastering myself, that's when my wealth just went stratospheric. And a lot of the stuff I can't even explain linearly. It was like, the woo-woo really kicked in. In a year after I started that journey, I was still a salaried employee, but my income quadrupled. But I was still doing the same thing. I started becoming far more authentic, because I started bringing all of me into the different aspects of my life, as opposed to compartmentalizing that. So I just became more successful. My managing my money, my investments, I just became better at those. And so my journey to financial freedom was 8 years, but it's never a linear journey. And that's what I really want to stress to people. The power of compounding and the power of knowledge, and all of this compounds on top of each other. So my journey looked something like that, trickling up, and then it just goes exponential. So for everybody listening, for you, that last couple of years before you hit financial freedom is when the bulk of that money will expand. But it's all the steps taken and putting the foundation in place that's needed to enable it to do that.
Yeah.
Mindset side. And then the key one on the technical side to start right now is to work out where it is you're headed. You know, there's a lovely quote saying, you know, if you don't know where you're going, any road will do.
I love that one.
And it's so true. And having now spoken to thousands of people around the world, I truly believe this is one of the key distinctions why 95% of the population, irrespective of what they earn, never achieve financial freedom. Because I'll ask when I'm speaking live, how many people know what their financial freedom number is? What is the size of your asset pot? What's the value of that you need to know, chink, I've got there, those assets could now earn me the income I want for my lifestyle if I so choose. And I'll ask people to put up their hands, and maybe we could even in the comments, you know, how many of you here type down, do you know what that magic number is for you? And typically in a speaking room, less than 10% of the audience will put their hand up. And so if you say, well, if we don't know where we're headed, if you don't know what that is, how do we start putting a plan together? And so this is really key. So right now, everyone on their computer, on their phone, get a calculator out, you're going to work out what your number is. And keep breathing, because for some of you it might be like, oh my God. But this is really empowering, because knowledge is power, because from that you can put a plan in. So we want to work out what the cost of your lifestyle is per year. So let's just start with your current lifestyle. And the easiest way to work that out is just, what are your current monthly expenses? What does your lifestyle cost you every month? Now, for some people go, and I haven't a clue, because I didn't want to look at that. So if that's you, just say, well, what do you earn every month? Assuming that just flows straight out, that you spend it all. So if you do know what is your monthly cost of your lifestyle, if you don't know that, what you bring in, and you want to multiply that by 12 because you want to know what your annual amount is. And this is a great thing. And as you start working about money, you're always going to think in terms of annual amounts, annual percentages, growth, yearly size. So now you've got a big number. That's the amount of money you need per year for your current lifestyle. Now you're going to divide that number. So that big number you've got, your annual expenses, you divide that by 0.08. 0.08. That's equivalent of 8%. That's all you're doing there. And then you press equals or press enter on your calculator, and a big number is going to pop up. That is your financial freedom number. That number that's come up, it's told you the value of the assets that you need that could earn you an income averaging an 8% rate of return. Now, don't know whether we've got enough time here to go why 8%. Go in the book, I explain that, because this gives you a buffer around, you're going to be aiming to get your money working for you at around about a 12% rate of return. So 8% gives you a buffer for tax. And I always prefer with myself and others to under-promise and over-deliver. You don't want to stretch too far. So this gives you your target number. So it'd be great to sort of see how many of you feel like, oh, is it bigger than you thought it was? Less than you thought it was? If you're feeling you need to sit down, have a drink of water, do that. But here's the thing. You're now an elite group of less than 5% of the population who actually knows what they're aiming for.
That's so empowering.
Work back from that. So, so key.
So obviously with this asset number, so that's what people need to build up to in terms of the assets that are generating their money, and then they're going to be making, so that is the big number, and if they've got assets worth that amount, then hopefully they're making at least 8% back from those assets on an annual basis. That's what's generating the revenue.
And feed their income. So should we talk a bit about what those assets are, or what would you like to cover?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've talked about so many different things, and I've been making some notes as you've been going, because I think obviously that mindset piece you talked about before is so crucial. And I think for me, this is such a fundamental part of my life. It's constantly going back to, like, what is that vision, and taking that time to do creative things like come up with a vision board, board and think about my goals. In fact, I shared something on my fan page recently of where I found a screenshot I took of my Facebook fan page from 2011, and it looks so old, and I'd photoshopped out the number of fans I had and put 25,000 because that was my goal, and I'm such a visual person. I stuck it on my goal vision board and had it there and believed that I would get there. And so I'm always doing these kinds of things because I feel like that's when it's almost like I feel like I reconnect with what I want and where I want to be, and figure that stuff out. And obviously the other stuff you talked about, like writing, getting a wealth journal and things like that, for me are also find so empowering. I will often sit down and write, if it's not a wealth journal, because I can't say I've ever kept one, but I'll write a letter to myself. So if there's issues coming up, say around money, I'll sit there and write a letter. Maybe it will even, I've never actually done it specifically to money, but like so often I'll do it to the problem and write. And at first it kind of like, I'm just writing stuff, and then it's literally like something switches and it starts to flow, and all of a sudden I become so consciously aware of stuff I did not even realize I was thinking or feeling. And I think, like that's you said, once you become consciously aware of what's really going on, then you can do something about it. And I think that piece is so important, because all the comments from the video we did of people talking about feeling like the head was stuck in the sand, well, that's a mental problem. And I think that's part of the problem with it. In fact, a lot of the problem with this is that it's that mental barrier, and it's not only a money issue, it's a life issue, because I always say, success is no accident. If you want to be successful, you have to do it on purpose. And it's the same with wealth. If you want to be wealthy, you have to do it on purpose. And that's a mental block, isn't it? It's like a barrier we have to break through to get there. So I really loved that piece, and I really hope everyone does the exercise where they sit down and they spend maybe an hour or so going over their vision for what does their life look like when they have created the wealth they want to create in it, and what does it feel like, how will they feel emotionally, and then obviously writing a letter to themselves to think about any issues that come up. I think this stuff's good to do time and time again. And obviously then going on to the side of it, which is the number side, like you said, talking about that number so that people know what they are aiming for. That is exciting, because then it starts to turn into, right, let's do this.
It can move it out of this amorphous space to something a bit more grounded and tangible.
Yeah.
And we need to be moving between that 50,000 foot visioning to where we are right here and now. Bring stuff down to the ground, getting specific, getting really specific on that visioning, rather than I want to feel happy, to what is that specifically? I want to feel wealthy, well, what is that specifically for us? Because this process is also such a journey, and I love going back to this for myself. What is wealthy for me, truly? And I think we can often underestimate the impact of media and magazines and society on this bombardment, telling us what wealthy is, telling us what success is. Mm-hmm. And the more we can connect into what is it for ourselves. And so, I really encourage people to absolutely go out there, go crazy, stretch that, create a big, scary, hairy, audacious, completely abundant, juicy feast. And then go and look at each one and go, is that truly mine? And because it's a very different goal and a very different plan you'll put in place. So, for example, your feast might be, I want 15 holiday homes in different countries, 3 yachts, my 2 Learjets, the new designer wardrobe every week, my private chef. Fantastic! And if that is your vision, just understand you're going to need a bigger asset pot.
A significantly larger one.
And make sure it is your vision.
Yeah.
Because so often we're taught that that's what it needs to look like.
Oh my goodness, don't get me started on this. I couldn't agree more with this whole topic.
Versus when we truly dig in, and maybe it's to have a beautiful cottage in the country somewhere with your herbs growing outside the window and that freedom of space to go and do your oil painting, or maybe go and do your flamenco dancing. It's a completely different endpoint, which will need a completely different asset pot. And so it's so important we get really true to ourselves on that, because it's so easy to now start designing a plan and a strategy on the side, and so just make sure we're getting on the right road.
Yeah. I think that's so true, because I originally, when I started off in my business journey, it was originally building my business because I ran out of money, and it was all about how could I become successful, how could I have financial freedom, and that was my goal, and that was what I was working towards, almost to the exclusion, well, not to the exclusion of a great service, because it was trying to build a successful business, but that was the focus. And then I remember getting there and having this money and feeling financially free because the business ran itself, and just feeling so miserable and unhappy because I never actually stopped to think about what would make my life amazing, or what was meaningful in my life. And literally that's when the mindset started happening, and I don't need money, and money doesn't make me happy, and all this stuff, and going on my little adventure with money, to changing it around, and then realizing actually what is meaningful to me in my life is having that money, but it doesn't have to be like this. You know, sometimes you get something set in your head. Like, I remember I always used to say, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 25. I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to drive a Ferrari. I'm not joking. I could pull out the gold books that I could show you. There was this black Ferrari. I think it was an F430 Spider. I would never drive that now. I just couldn't imagine it. And it was because I was so not connected to myself and to what I really, truly wanted. I was like exactly what you said. I was thinking about what someone else told me that success should be like. $100,000 or pounds or whatever a year is an awful lot of money, and I think sometimes we can lose the plot a bit with what we need to make, and that's the thing. It's always coming back to this point of being happy and living a happy life, and that's what wealth truly is, I think. So I really like that you've talked about that, because I think sometimes we do get carried away thinking things that aren't true to ourselves, and because people tell us that's what we should do, especially like if you're in business. People say you need to be, if you're a successful business, you should be making this much money, you should be doing this, you should be charging this, and you think, hang on a second, that might be your story, but it's not necessarily my story, and if I want to charge a certain amount, or if I want to do things a certain way, then that's okay. And I think it's this balance and being clear on that yourself, and then sticking to it. So anyway, that was...
No, absolutely, and I'm so glad we've got to this point, because this comes back to the core, and I think for a lot of people actually find that it won't actually reduce their financial freedom number, but I think the congruency with it, because when you're aligned with that, and then your big why, so what is it going to, by achieving this, what is it going to enable you to do? What is it able to you to contribute, to expand outside of yourself? It becomes less about driving that Ferrari. And there's nothing wrong with driving a Ferrari.
No, there's not. I would agree, yeah.
But those are just part of the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And when you can get really aligned with that core, that gives you more motivation to go, okay, you know what, some of this money stuff can feel a bit of drudgery. It does need a little bit of effort. It's a bit like, you've got to go to the gym sometimes and do some crunchies. Because you love crunchies, but I hate them and I don't go to the gym. But I'm using that analogy, a bit like you've got to have some of your vegetables. You start going, I understand why I'm going to do this. And you get excited about doing it because of it being an enabler. So having that money date once a month is because, yep, we need to see what's happening with the money so we can give it some great leadership, going what's doing it. But when you connect it into why you're choosing to do it, because it's this plowing that soil, preparing it like a great farmer to plant the next crop, is so important of that preparation, because it's because of the crop that's going to come, not because you naturally enjoy plowing.
Yeah.
And changes that relationship.
So obviously, I know in your book you go into more detail as to obviously these different asset classes that people can use to help them to build up their asset pot, their wealth, where they're going to generate that hopefully 8% or more back from that asset.
Yeah.
That asset group. Obviously, that is a huge topic in itself, but it would be really good to maybe go over some of the things, because I remember when you touched on it briefly in the video that we did. You gave an example of you could start doing something right now today, which in a year's time would enable you to have grown your wealth, and also got your mindset in the place that just started testing the waters to see what is possible with this and getting comfortable with it. So could you share some things with regards to that?
Let's get juicy and start talking about these wonderful things called assets, and I think everyone's going to learn to love them, because this is when you realize these are the things that create your wealth. You start shifting your focus from income being the most important thing, because income's not the most important ingredient, it's what we do with it. And the more of that we can convert into these juicy things called assets, the faster that wealth expands, and all the stuff that comes with it. So the first asset group is investing through the stock market. Now notice I said through, not in, because even that languaging is a misnomer. So yes, I'm talking about stocks and shares, equity it's also called. And a lot of people find this, and a lot of women find, oh no, this sounds scary. It's that side of those, the Wolf of Wall Street and the chaos going on, and you can lose it all, and it all sounds a bit like a big gamble going out there. So firstly, all you're doing when you invest through the stock market is you're buying a piece of somebody else's business. First, really get that clear, and this is what's so cool. For a small amount of money, you can own a piece of awesome businesses all around the world, and you get to benefit from that business's income and that business's growth without having to pitch up for a day's work, which is pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
It goes and works for you. So that's why I use the word you invest through the stock market, because a lot of people, I invest in the stock market. So when you think of it as a market, it's just like you going to a food market. And at the stock market, there are different stalls for different kind of companies that you can buy. And there are retail companies, or they're financial companies, or they're industrial kind of companies. And you can go and go, oh, I'll have a little bit of that, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of that to put this into your basket. And that's all you're doing. You're buying a piece of company. So when you demystify that and go, okay, so companies expand and grow. And now in the Expand Your Dough recipe, and I mentioned this as the first asset class because I really want to encourage every single person to start here. Because you get these fantastic investment products called index trackers. And I go in a lot of detail in the book in terms of what these are. And these are low-cost products where effectively a computer has gone into the market for you, and it's taken the basket, and it's taken a little bit from the retail store, the commodity store, the industrial store, the butchery, and all of that, and put it into a basket. And they've selected the biggest and best companies that are the ones that are sustainable. Companies that have really got good track records, that are the biggest companies being sold in that market, and put it in a basket. And then you buy just a slice of that basket, this index. So with a single investment, you've already spread your risk. You're not buying a single company or a single site. You've already got the spread for a single transaction, which is what makes it very low cost. So for any of you that are already feeling like you're shutting down because I'm starting using some of that languaging, breathe, have a glass of water, because the more we get familiar with this language, the easier it is. But what is so great about these index trackers is, firstly, they are low cost. So what that means is some fat cat in the city isn't taking a whole big slice of your money off before your money gets working for you. The vast majority and almost all of your money gets to work for you. It stays in your life and works for you rather than working for somebody else. Because there are so many investment products out there, whether they're from pensions, 401ks, superannuations in Australia, what I call these pre-packaged TV dinner investment products. They're all invested in the stock market. The problem is they've come with so many layers of wrapping and packaging around it that firstly you can't see what the hell's in the product. And they're just layers and layers of fees that goes to make the financial industry the fat cats and very little left for you. And it's so dangerous that a lot of people have got these products believing they're doing the right thing and putting money aside into this, but actually most of that money is not working for them. And I really want to get people empowered to see this isn't so scary. And you can, through this, and from £30 a month, $50 a month, you can set up an automatic investment in an index tracker fund, And you make this ritualistic habit of realizing you can put that money away in a small enough amount that it's not going to feel completely scary. And then you start seeing it growing. That money doesn't now just suddenly all disappear. It doesn't go down the drain. You start seeing how that money starts earning money for you. And this is the power of that habit. And then you go, I can maybe up that to 35, maybe 40. And as you're doing that, while you're focusing on squeezing more juice out of your expenses, getting more conscious in these other areas of your wealth kitchen, you're able to start directing more money. And this is when the snowball just builds up and expands. And so I really encourage everybody to have an aspect of investments and start with the stock market.
What is is there an average kind of rough rate of return for investing in an index tracker?
There absolutely is. Since God was a lad, and tracking since the markets have been in place. So these are the stock markets around the world. So in London, the stock market's got a nickname. It's called the FTSE. And so a FTSE index tracker would just be an index tracker that tracks what's listed on the London Stock Exchange, the New York Stock Exchange. So you've got the NASDAQ, you've got the Dow Jones. In France, it's called the DAC. In Australia, it's called the ASX. It says what it says on the tin, the Australian Stock Exchange. And when you look across over time, yes, it goes up and down a little bit, but over time, all of the markets have averaged to about 11.7% rate of return.
Wow.
Yeah.
Blimey.
We'll go, but, Anne, I'm getting nothing from the bank, and well, absolutely, your money's not going to make money in the bank because it's not, you're not sending it to work. You want to send it off to work for these businesses that you can buy so that you get it returned. So, and then different markets have different returns. So a lot of the developing markets, so for example, in South Africa, the South African stock market has actually been historically one of the best returning stock markets because it's been predominantly industrial and commodity based. And so in the last 15 years, that stock market has returned an average of 23% per annum.
Wow.
But it comes with a slight currency risk. So when you average those out and you want a small amount of what's called diversification, so you could have an index tracker, let's say, on the London stock market, one for the New York stock market, and one for, say, an emerging market. All you need is 3 little products, 3 little index trackers, each with a little bit of money going in, and you'll be looking over time, averaging between that 10 and 15%, and hence the 12% target rate of return we're saying you'll get from just that.
Are there any risks with that? Because I wonder whether people are thinking this right now, oh, this sounds really great, but the stock market's risky. And like you've already kind of said that, but is there a genuine risk with investing in an index tracker?
I think the really important thing is for us to understand the word risk by its very nature. For me, the greatest risk is for any of us to not take actions to work on our financial well-being. By being stuck in analysis paralysis or doing nothing out of fear guarantees that we won't achieve the financial well-being and certainty we want. So risk is directly related to just knowledge. And
Yeah.
or we can just educate ourselves. So there is volatility. And so I think let's rather use that word volatility versus risk, because often risk, and a lot of people think, I can lose everything on the stock market. Now, if you go and listen to Aunt Mabel, who says, her hairdresser's cousin heard from the motorbiker that this stock was going to go through the roof, and you go and put all of your money in a single stock, again, something that you have no idea what in, that is incredibly risky because you've got no idea what you're investing in. And a lot of people email me and oh, I saw this advert in the paper where it says I can double my money in a year. Should I invest in it? I go, well, how the hell should I know? Because I don't know what you're investing in.
Yeah.
Want to understand that going back to what are you investing in? You're investing in great companies. So the great thing about index trackers is you can see exactly where your money's going. you can see what is those top 40 companies. It's the Googles, it's the Apples, it's the Whole Foods, it's the Walt Disneys of the world. These are big established companies with solid management. It's about starting to get a little bit savvy, peeling back the layer and seeing what I'm investing in. But you also want what's called diversification. You want to spread that risk. That if something were to happen in one little sector, you don't have all of your proverbial eggs in one basket. And this comes back to what you spoke about earlier about needing some multiple assets and different assets in your asset pot, and these multiple streams of income. Because one of the big risks I see for a lot of entrepreneurs is all of their resources get plowed into a single egg. It's called their business. And their resources in terms of their money and also their time and their energy and their creativity. So they're literally backing a single horse. And so by starting to direct some of your money into something out away from your business is really important in balancing that out. And over time, you want to have some in the stock market in already a diversified product like an index tracker. But the great part is it's easy because you can put it on automatic pilot. You select your index tracker once, you set up your direct debit, and then you get on with living your life. And you only come back a year later and go, do I want to change it or to something else? But that's when you'll then start moving to, say, investment property and start bringing a whole different asset class in, because they move in different cycles, the stock market and the property. And then the third, so that's the second asset class, is in investment property. Not the property that you live in, not your own home, because that sits squarely in the liability drawer. We want it to be in the asset drawer. So this is property where other people can pay you basically rent, and it could be residential or commercial or industrial. Great, another whole sector to learn about and get excited about. And then the third one is where we can create passive or low input businesses. For a lot of entrepreneurs with online businesses, that's about where can you create products or programs that can keep delivering income for you without you having to be actively involved in the time for money exchange. That's also businesses like vending machines, for example. Wonderful low-cost businesses. You could, buy a couple of vending machines or even lease them, putting in different places that can earn money for you. Car wash systems. So it's not only online, there's offline. These are also kind of things where you could earn royalties or licenses from it. So whether it's music you create, your photography, a book you write, these are things where you create something once and it can go on working for you. So that's the third asset class, which is again this big, wonderful playground. You can go in, like Sweetie Factory, so many different things you can do, but you want to get these little streams. So by having these different components, this reduces your risk because you're not relying on a single thing to bring you that money. And the fourth asset class is ourselves. And this is when I spoke about that self-mastery journey and why it became recipe number 5. And I really realized the importance of this asset class, because ultimately our creativity and our knowledge and our ability to manage this and manage our money and get better at our investing, get better at creating assets, get better at the business, that accelerates it. So we've got to keep growing ourselves and investing in that. So those are the 4 asset classes.
I think it's amazing, and I do love what you say about all of this, and I feel like I kind of said this so many times in this session, but I think it's really great because you've done it and you've proven that it's possible, and so I feel like it gives so much hope and empowerment to everyone else who hasn't started their journey yet or is just about to start their journey, that it's possible. And even the question I asked about is investing in an index tracker risky, and I only asked that because I thought it's something I've thought before and also thought maybe other people were thinking it, but I think the part in me that makes me feel reassured is the fact, like what you said, it's far more risky to do nothing. And I think you're such a great example because you've done it, you've invested, you've learned, you've understood, and you've also got to where you want to be financially, and that is so inspiring. So thank you so much for coming and sharing these tips and strategies. I know you go into so much more detail in the book in them, so like I said at the beginning to everyone, I can't recommend highly enough that you get Anne's book, The Wealth Chef. There is a link in the right hand side where you can get the free copy of her book. She's bought it for you. All there is just a $7 shipping charge for getting it shipped wherever you are in the world. And also, like Anne said, you get access to your 4-week pro course, isn't it, online?
Program where we go into, really, you can go and understand what are liabilities, what are expenses, these 5 different recipes, really getting clear on your wealth. There's little processes and videos to really get you going, keeping momentum, because it's these little bits. Just give money some space in your life. You know, it's about developing a relationship with it. You know, if you completely ignore your partner, your relationship's not going to stay great for long. So it's about investing a little bit of time, and as you do, you get more and more confident and more comfortable.
That is so amazing. So I know we're right at the end, but I'm just going to have a look and see whether, I know I've seen a few questions come in. So
well, thanks for sharing your financial freedom number. Woo! Well done, everybody.
Someone who, these comments move by so quickly. Where is it? Someone, Aziza, I hope I pronounced her name right. I'm so sorry if I didn't. She says, "Hi, any idea how much to invest a month?" I guess you can't really answer that question, knowing based on it would.
Your basic target is you really want to be ensuring that a minimum of 10% of what you bring in, you allow to stay in your life and convert that into assets. This is this key aspect of paying yourself first, paying towards your own vision, your financial freedom yourself. This is so key about allowing that in. So your target is to get to a minimum of 10%. So that can be converted into assets. And we haven't had a chance to get into compounding, all of that. But if you start during your working career and your earning career, put just that 10% aside. That 10% converted into something like an index tracker, just earning an average of 10%, so if you earn 10% per annum, that money will earn twice the amount of money that you do actively. I mean, that's a radical thought. It's like cloning 2 of you.
Yeah.
And that money and those 2 clones of you don't need a holiday, they don't need shoes, they don't go to a facial or have a rest. So you get to keep that money. So your target is a minimum of 10%. But as it starts expanding, you'll find that you can put more and more in.
That's a really good place to start, though. Michaela says, what was the 4th asset that she had to refresh her screen, so she missed it?
The 4th asset class is you. You are the greatest asset you have. So keep expanding your knowledge, yourself, your skills, and that makes the rest grow.
Agnes says she's from Toronto, and she said, any recommendations on a good financial planner? What do you think about financial planners, and what would your advice be on that side of things?
I think there is a role for financial planners, but the key thing is get yourself confident and savvy enough that you can go and have a conversation with a financial planner from a place of empowerment, rather than feeling, oh, you've just got to trust everything that they say. And so some people are too afraid to ask questions or ask them about their fees and those kind of things. Start getting savvy. Now, very few financial planners are going to recommend to you something like an index tracker because they make no commission. You've just got to understand how a financial planner model works for most people. They've come from these residual fees from these TV dinner products. Having said that, there are some great financial planners out there. And so be prepared to, I far rather pay up front for advice that I'm needing in very specific areas. And then I interview financial planners before I work with them to find out and ask them, what is their financial plan? Are they financially free? What rate of return are they getting? You know, be confident about this, but almost become your own financial planner.
I like
that. Is your place.
There's another one in from Keisha. She said, this may have been mentioned, but Anne, for someone who's getting restarted with getting into wealth building, where would you recommend they begin?
Go and have a look at each of your 4 pots. You see what income's coming in, what expenses are going out, what liabilities you have, that's any debts, and what assets. You first got to go, where am I now? Because having a look at those 4 compartments is going to give you a very good sense of where you need to start. So, for example, if more is flowing out than is coming in, then you know, okay, I need to look at the expenses and how do I squeeze more juice out and make sure I'm getting real value? How can I start bringing the income coming in? If you've got balance in that area, you start looking at your liabilities and your assets. If there's a lot of debt and liabilities, what is that impact having on your expenses? Okay, I need to blitz that debt and really get that recipe going. So first get comfortable, see what's happening in your wealth life. And then that's going to give you a clear indication of where to focus on first.
Tracy says, do we invest before we pay off debt?
Great question. You want to be doing it in parallel. And the reason being is you want to be learning a new skill and new habits while you're reducing your debt. Because so many people end up clearing debt, but because they haven't created a wealth habit, they now go back into debt because they get out of debt and then it's now what? So you want the bulk of really squeezing the juice out of your income and making sure as much can go in and put in place a debt blitzing strategy, a structured plan that you commit to. But when you've got that plan in place, now you can relax and now you can focus on your wealth. So just start that little bit of habit of some money going into an asset, just a small amount, so you're starting to program your mind around that and get confidence on creating assets while you're reducing your debt.
Kimberly said, is an index tracker something that you have to contribute to every month, or are you purchasing different ones each month?
Well, this is the great thing, is you just select an index tracker. And sorry, I'm just having to move because I suddenly saw my battery, the plug working. So isn't this marvelous, is how we can just move around the world. There you go. Just getting the power in so I don't get cut off. I've gone completely dark. Where am I get some light? The great thing about an index tracker, you can set it up as a direct debit. So there are wonderful companies. A very good index tracking company is one called Vanguard. They basically created index trackers, and you can get one in the FTSE, which is the London stock market, the S&P 500. And you can set up a direct debit, which just goes in every month, an automatic monthly transfer, and you're buying the same index tracker because you're buying the same basket of shares every month, and the computer just gives you that selection. So it's really straightforward and simple, and you don't have, it's not about spending hours in front of a computer. And I really learned on my journey, because this was a key distinction. When I started, I also was of the belief a bit that the more complicated something was, the better it must be. And we're in a bit of that side in our society, that we think complexity is better. And for a lot of people will go, but and just investing in index tracker, it sounds so simple and just so automated. Surely it can't be good enough. And I learned that the more I let things be simple and straightforward, the better returns I got, and the more joy and wealth I had in my life, because I got on with doing the stuff that I was great at, that filled me up. So yes, single index tracker, put it in place, and get on with living your life.
I hope everyone goes and does all this. I'll be excited to see how people get on. A lot of people have asked questions regarding things that we've already covered, like about when you were talking about how to get to your financial number and know what your asset pot needs to be. So for everyone, there will be a replay of this, so you can watch it all again, and you can, pause the video as you're going along and rewind it and take notes and really listen to what Anne's suggestions are, so that you can create that wealth picture, figure out that financial your financial goal, and then obviously the stuff she's talked about with regards to the asset classes. Obviously, Anne, I know you just have to move soon from the dark now, so
sorry about that. I'm literally in the dark.
But thank you so much for coming and sharing all of that. I feel like this is such a great topic, and I'm so grateful that you are leading the way for this conversation, especially for women, because it's such an important one to have. And I know in the book that you talk about the number of women that end up actually at some point in their lives being on their own and having to take control of their money, but the number of women that actually don't know anything about how to take control of their money. And we don't learn about this stuff, and you talked about that earlier, and it just makes me think, it sometimes makes me angry. I'm like, why do we not get taught this stuff at school? How do we not get taught how to manage our money? Blows my mind. But I'm just so glad that you're leading the way on this conversation in a way that actually resonates with women, and that you're making it easy for us. This conversation, I've just read some of the comments where people are saying about how they used to think that the stock market was scary, but the way you're talking about is actually really enlightening and doable. And that's the thing, and I think that's what's incredible about the work that you're doing right now to help other people, because I think it'll enable us, all of us, if we take what you say and take action on it. I think we'll all see amazing results, and we can all be like you, and maybe in the future, maybe in 8 years, maybe longer, maybe less time, who knows, but we'll all be in a much better place, that's for sure, from listening to your advice. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing and for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it.
And just thank you for everybody that's tuned in, because I really want to honor everyone that's taken this time and tuned in, because this is one of those areas that sometimes it can be either feeling overwhelming or going, oh, yeah, another time, or that's not for someone like me. And I just so want to honor that, because I see every day the impact on people not living their lives, not being able to express all of themselves because of this thing around money, and the tragedy and the impact that it happens on families and individuals. And this is what I'm passionate about, because the difference it makes in a person's life when we can just shift that relationship with money is enormous. And Carrie, I'm sure we're going to be back on, because there's so many different sub areas to talk about. We can come back on, and depending on everybody's on, just discussing relationship and money. We could dive in on the debt topic, on the investing. So absolutely wonderful to be.
You'll have to come back, definitely, because I'm going to be putting into action the stuff you're saying, especially with regards to the index trackers. So I will be more than happy to share my experience, things that have made my head hurt, and the progress that I have made. So yeah, we'll definitely have to have you come back. One last thing I wanted to say: how long is that? You know, the link you've given us for the free book. How long will that be active for?
I'm keeping up because we're getting all the shipping out, so until Sunday night.
Okay.
So please, get that book. Get your, order, let your friends know, but by Sunday night I'm going to have to bring it down, because I've got to get all the shipping out. And so if you do miss it, the book, you can buy the book on Amazon, and then you can go to thewellchefbook.com and just put in your receipt, and you'll still get the program.
Okay.
So, get your friends on board, because also just sharing this, like a book club, create a wealth club.
Yeah, that's such a good idea.
Hold each other accountable.
Yeah, I love that idea. But thank you so much. I hope you have all enjoyed this so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed it and made notes throughout it, and I'm going to be rewatching this and making even more notes. But I hope you've all enjoyed this, and I hope you're all feeling far more empowered now about money, and feeling like you really can take control of it, and like you can get to where you want to be financially, because you can. There is no doubt about it. You can definitely get there. Just get Anne's book, follow her strategies, go on her website. She's got so many great free tools and different things going on over there. So I think you're such a great leader to learn from. Like you said, it's about figuring out, learning more about it. So yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed it, and thank you once again, and I will see you all soon.
Thank you. Sorry I went in the dark.
No, it's okay.